I'm thinking take these cap screws out so this retainer plate will be loose, and then press or drive on the end of that shaft. That should push the shaft out of the bearing on that end, and this retainer plate and bearing out of the housing on this end. So that's what I'm going to attempt. So first it's fold back the fold over locks. Then remove the cap screws. Now if you see here, I had seen just a little bitty line, like the bearing race maybe was cracked, and I applied some heat to the bearing race all the way around. Not overly amount, as you can see, but now that crack seems to have opened way up. So whether that bearing race cracked from rust in between jacking it over the years, or when the cage failed and the balls bunched up, and who knows, but the race is cracked there obviously. So what I'm going to try and do, I got one of them to move. I'm going to try and hammer all those bearings loose and get the rust out of them. Then maybe this inner race will expand a little bit to loosen it up on the shaft. I could probably go in here with the torch and cut that inner race, but it would still have pressure on it with the balls. So I'm going to leave that as the last resort. I'm going to work on trying to get all these balls loosened up and rust hammered loose so there's not as much pressure on anything. Here I ran across, I actually picked out a couple little pieces of metal that would have been left over from the cage around the ball bearings. I have 5 of them loose so far, and I keep working on those ball bearings to get them all freed up all the way around. Now you can plainly see, at least I can, that crack appears to go all the way through the race. So that's actually a good thing. It'll help to loosen it up on that shaft. Well, I got all the balls loose, and I have it rotating. And I've been spinning around some just to work the rust off of the balls, so hopefully this race can expand a little bit more to make it come off the shaft easier. And also I can spin that race on the shaft. And it's getting looser on the shaft. So I'll work some more oil into it before I lay it on the side to see if it might come apart. And look at this. It moves. And this end has a Hyatt bearing. I'm going to pull it out now. Everything is heavy. Now, does anyone out there know anything about old ball bearings? This being such a straight, perfect split, that almost looks like that's supposed to be in there from when the bearing was manufactured. And I always talk about reading the old machinery. Maybe the reason the stationary drive unit was taken off was that this bearing had seized, because you can see galling on the inside of the bearing race there. So maybe that bearing had seized up and they took it apart and never got any farther. We're going to look at the I'm going to look at the shaft now, see if there's galling on the shaft. Yes, there's definitely galling on the shaft. So that may be why the stationary drive unit was taken off. So I'm guessing it was seizing up and they took it off and just went on to using something else or doing something else. I'll never know that part of the story. Alan didn't tell me that. Look at the amount of clay that came out of that housing that settled in through that bearing over the years. It's just amazing how much washed its way in there, sitting on the ground. So I think that's going to be it for this video. I'm going to take the number and call a bearing supplier, see how readily available the bearing is. But I also found these, which are obviously shims or whatever, came out of the inside. So I have no idea how those are supposed to go in, or what their purpose is. There has to be a thrust. I don't know if the ball bearing on this end provided the thrust surface. But then for the side thrust on this shaft from the bevel gear, and where those shims would have come into play, I'm going to have to do some more investigating. It's kind of tough without a parts book. So thanks again for watching.